Should I say hi, guys? Yeah. Hi guys, my name's Luke, and for those that don't know me, I'm the production leader here at Gracegate.
Hi, my name is Georgia. I work in a lot of the content creation at Gracegate, so I do like social media and photography and graphics and all sorts of things.
My name's Charmaine and I work at Gracegate, but behind the scenes, and in my area I do a lot of the graphics that you might see around the building and some website stuff and social media and a lot of visual things, like I help out with decor and setups for new series and things like that.
Now the why behind what I do here is firstly I really enjoy what I do. It's really fun. I'm the reason that the screens work and all of that, which is what I'm on right now. But yeah, and I also just love amplifying the Word of God and just seeing how I can create something and make a vision of what God has created, and just help amplify, create, and yeah, help worship God.
I think for me the reason why I do that is, one, I love anything creative. Honestly, it's what gives me life, but I think I especially love photography. For me that is huge because capturing the moments where people see God is just something I love to do. It's like I get to relive those moments that I've had all over again. A big one that I remember was Jashom's baptism. I took some photos of him, and the emotion on his face in that moment was something that I felt like it was me being baptized as well there. It was just so awesome to see, and I think that's what really encourages me to keep doing what I'm doing, because being able to share those moments with everyone and see them from a completely different perspective, man, that is just the coolest thing ever.
So a typical work week is a lot of sitting behind a computer and coming up with new ideas. And for me, the part that really is exciting is taking an idea and finding a way to make it look good visually. So taking some concepts from the programming team when they're planning out the different series for church and listening to what they say and finding the nuggets in there, and then trying to put it into some sort of visual set that'll convey the message of Jesus really well visually, which you get to see at church on Saturdays.
Can we give our crew, the creative team, a big hand? We often just take for granted everything that they do, but they add and they contribute to the message that we want to convey here at Gracegate. And I mean, honestly, look at these graphics. These are, just created, designed by our team, and I love it. Do you guys think that's cool? It just adds to our environment with the worships, the lights, the sound. And honestly, Luke's actually in charge here. Because if he wants to, he could switch me off right now. And you guys would, you see? So he holds a lot of power. But honestly, we love the crew that, contributes to communicating and helping us share who we are. And right now, we have people watching live on YouTube, and so we are grateful that we can be a church that has all this tech gear and a creative arts team who contribute to, conveying our message. But more than that, if, you are sitting in the pew today or in your chair and you're thinking, man, I'd love to learn. I'd like to actually learn some of that stuff and be involved. There is always a space for you, all right? Every single week, we're trying to recruit volunteers to get engaged and get involved. And so if that sounds like you, go and have a chat to Shah. She's sitting in the front here, or Georgia in the context of photography, and Luke at the back in the context of any of the tech stuff. And yeah, it will be, it's really a gift, and it's pretty cool learning some new stuff that, we can use here at Gracegate. So thanks, team. Thanks for that video and for your contribution. So we're in our second week of a series titled The Best Way to Live Life. And really what we're looking at is we're looking and following the way of Jesus. Jesus lived a life. He modeled a life that we think is best for us as human beings. As we follow him step by step, we think we can learn a lot from him. But most importantly about this series that we really hope is going to be the take-homes is that we kind of know this stuff already. I think that throughout these couple of weeks that we're going to be speaking about the best way to live life, I think we all know this information. But our hope as a programming team is that we will inspire you to actually not only know it, but to actually live it out and to actually do it. And that's why we've chosen this title, The Best Way to Live Life. Not just to know about life and know some ways or principles, but actually to put it into practice and to live it out. And last week, we spoke a bit about generosity. We think living a life of generosity is one of the best ways that you can live life. And we also saw that, if you refresh others, you yourself will be refreshed. And wasn't it cool to have this story up of Harlow? Harlow, for those who don't know or who weren't here last week, Harlow is one of the young people in our community, and she decided she wants to actually start this initiative at our block party of making these lucky hampers and selling them, and all the contribution will go to mummies in need. And so it was cool. Harlow did this, and she raised $201. Isn't that cool? But I thought, last week I shared, it would have been cool if I could interview her. She wasn't here last week, but guess what? She's sitting in church right today. And so, Harlow, can you come up? Is that okay? Let's give Harlow a big hand. Oh, you got a mic already. So, Harlow, thank you for joining me on stage. You have a lot of sass, right? Look at that photo. And tell me a bit about that shirt that you're wearing. What's that about?
I got it because my mum was supposed to be doing this thing at school. She was doing Mental Health Foundation, and she was giving out stickers. Okay. And that's how I got the shirt.
Awesome. That's a cool shirt, and it's standing actually against bullying, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the best ways you can live, is actually stand for something. And tell me where this initiative came from. Why did you decide to take all your time and your finances and create, or maybe it's your grandparents' finances, I don't know, but why did you decide to do this initiative?
Well, I decided to do it because I volunteer with my mum at Mummies in Need, and I thought it would be the best organisation because there's children there and there's mums and who knows what they could be going through. And so I decided, why not donate to them and help them out?
That is amazing. Can we give Harlow a hand? Harlow, last week we spoke a bit about, everyone can make a difference. And can you tell us how old you are?
I'm 10 years old.
10 years old, okay. And you thought of this initiative, and it was, it's so awesome. And last week you weren't here, but I actually challenged all our friends here in our church. I said, hey, it would be cool. I know you raised $201, but wouldn't it be cool if we could also be generous and contribute to Mummies in Need? And so some of our community went back, and they actually said they'll contribute to Mummies in Need and in support of your initiative. And it inspires us because your story inspires us of generosity. And so it inspired a whole bunch of people. And so in this card we have here for you, Harlow, is another $550 that was raised by our community, all right? And so we'd love you to also share that with Mummies in Need. And we are so proud of you. And watch this space, because Harlow, you're only 10 now, but I think we've seen her over the years be a difference maker here at Gracegate, and she's going places. So awesome. Thanks, Harlow, for joining us on stage. So what is your excuse? No, we won't go there. Anyway, really encouraging. Today, I want to ask this question. What do you think is the best way to live life? What is the best way to live life? If you have to think about that question, there's so many good things in this world, right? Jason was on stage today speaking about, how he loves motorbikes. It just refreshes his soul. If I look at these graphics, I see ice cream, I see adventure, I see surfing, some really great stuff, right? That is the best way to live life. We get communicated daily different things that we need to do that will really just help us to live the best way of life. Maybe it's food for you, right? Just having that great Indian curry or that Mexican food or Korean barbecue. It's just the best way to live life. It satisfies, right? Or maybe it's travel. Maybe it's going to different places. Maybe it's just, taking and seizing every opportunity of adventure. Maybe it's bungee jumping. What is it for you? What is the best way to live life? Maybe it's snorkeling. Maybe it's going fishing out with some mates. Maybe it's reading a book. Maybe it's just, spending quality time with your family. What is the best way to live life? Cats. There had to be someone who said cats. Cats, right? Dogs, yeah. But John Mark Comer, he speaks about these thoughts of desire. That each one of us, we wake up every morning with desire. We have a desire. And maybe this morning you woke up with a desire. Maybe it was a desire for a great cup of coffee. Maybe it was for community. Maybe it was, just to enjoy life. Maybe it was this past week when you woke up and you knew you had to go to work because you have a desire to work so that you can provide. Each one of us has a desire, right? And this desire is kind of what motivates us to live life. It motivates us. It gets us up. It's these things that we really want to do or achieve or accumulate because we think that this satisfies. But he would share that desire, there's something dangerous about it. And he says this, he says that desire is never satisfied, right? Desire is never satisfied because we can never travel to enough countries. We can never have one coffee and be content and be like, hey, that's it for life, I'm good. Never have another coffee again. We can never go to a restaurant and just have one meal and be content that satisfies that hunger and be like, I don't need anything anymore. We can never accumulate enough to be content and think that, hey, we don't need anything more. We just always are in pursuit of this desire, and the danger that he expresses is that this desire is never satisfied. Desire is never satisfied, and the reason for that is he says that desire is infinite. Desire is infinite, that we are created with something that is infinite in us, each and every one of us, that it is ongoing, it never ends. And all of us live our life in pursuit of these desires so that we can try and find satisfaction. But unfortunately, the danger is that desire never satisfies. And so we ask this question, we wrestle through life continuously trying to figure out what will satisfy these desires that I have. And the biggest danger that we can have is not when we are pursuing our desires, but when our desires are actually controlling us and they take the steering wheel. And what happens is we find ourselves in a place of restlessness, right? Because we're trying to achieve, we're trying to accumulate, we're trying to do more. And we experience all these emotions. Our to-do lists are never ending. Our schedule's overloaded. We're living a hurried life. We can never be content with what we have. And I mean, we live in a culture and in a world where we just get advertisements every single day showing us that if only we had this, then we would be satisfied. If only we did this, then we would be content. So we find ourselves in a very difficult place. And today maybe you are sitting in this community on that treadmill where you actually feeling this restlessness, where you're feeling just like, man, I just don't know how I'm ever going to get there. I just don't know how I'm ever going to finish everything. I just don't know how I'm ever going to experience true contentment in life. John Mark Comer, he shares about an author who says that, so what will really satisfy this desire? And he answers it and he says, everything. Everything. You know what will satisfy our desire? Is everything. Imagine that if we actually could do everything, every adventure out there. We'll travel to every country. We'll have relationships with everybody. We would eat every single food. We would enjoy every sports game. We would read every book. We would listen to every podcast. The only way that we will actually be able to satisfy this desire is if we did everything. But then he gives us a solution. He says the only way that we can truly satisfy something that is infinite and we are finite is if we actually look to God. Because God is infinite. God exists outside of space and time. And so if we had to reprioritize our desires and place Him as number one priority in our life, he says this is probably the start where we would experience a rest for our souls. And that's what I want to speak about today. That one of the best ways that we can live life is if we had rest for our souls. If we prioritized God as the greatest desire of our life. And as the psalmist would say in Psalms 37, he would say, hey, delight yourself in God, and you will have all the desires of your heart as we prioritize Him. Jesus said that He is the way, the truth, and the life. And one of His earliest teachings, when He arrives on this earth, He goes and I guess in a context that is also people are kind of spiritually pursuing, trying to do so much to achieve relationship with God, trying to perform in all their traditions and everything to make sure that they can get in relationship with God. Jesus rocks up on the scene and He shares this in Matthew. And this is what He says, come to me. I mean, we could end this series right here today just with those 3 words, and we'll live the best life. Come to me. You see, Jesus invites us. It's this invitation. He says all we got to do is come to Him. And I love how He shares this. He says, all you who are weary and burdened, like all you who are not content, who are stressed, who are too busy, who are just accumulating, trying to find contentment, He says to us, hey, come to me, and you who are weary and burdened, and I love this, I will give you rest. I'll give you rest. And then Jesus goes on and He says this, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. Rest for your soul. Jesus says, if you take my yoke, in other words, if you follow my ways and my teachings, if you look to me and the way I lived, and you would follow in those footsteps, you would place this yoke upon you, you will see that, hey, this yoke It's easy, it's gentle and humble, and it will give you rest for your soul. When your soul is craving, when it's searching in all the wrong places, Jesus promises a way that will bring contentment and satisfaction to our soul. He goes on and he says, "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And I love this because I don't know your framework of faith or God, but if ever faith or Christianity has looked like hard work for you, that is not the way of Jesus. Jesus is showing us here that his yoke is easy and that his burden is light. Eugene Peterson phrases it like this in the Message Bible. He says, "I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you." And he says, "Keep company with me." And when I read that, I think of the passage where Jesus would be teaching about him being the vine and us being the branches, right? And all he says there is, "I want you to abide in me. I want you to remain in me." There's not a to-do list. There's not a work schedule. He says, "Hey, just stay with me. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." That's our series title. What is the best way to live life? Well, Jesus says, hey, keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Now, one thing I learned this week, and I've never seen this before, but this is Jesus teaching this to the people. He's helping them see that, hey, faith is really about keeping company with him. And he says this is the best way to live life. And as soon as he finishes this, Matthew goes on to 2 stories. And he speaks about this thing called the Sabbath. Straight after he says, hey, come to me. If you want to find rest for your souls, he speaks about this thing called the Sabbath. He speaks about his disciples in Matthew 12 where they're collecting grain and they're eating on the Sabbath. And the religious leaders come to Jesus and his disciples and they say to him, hey, what are you guys doing on the Sabbath? Because the Sabbath was this holy day that was set apart for people of faith. And these Pharisees, these religious leaders are saying, hey, you are breaking the Sabbath. And then Jesus rises up and he shares this really significant statement. He says this, he says, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. What Jesus is saying here is that he is ruler. He is in control of this thing called the Sabbath, this thing called rest, this thing that was set apart, this thing that is a practice of living the best way in life. Jesus shares straight in Matthew 11, don't miss this. He says, hey, come to me, learn from my yoke and my ways. They're light, and you will find rest for your souls. And then he shares these 2 stories about him and the Sabbath, and he shares that, hey, he is the ruler of the Sabbath. Today, if you've never heard about the Sabbath, I want to take you back to when it all began, right in the beginning of the earth's history, when God himself is creating, when he is actually has this desire to create humanity, to create this earth, to bring life to it and meaning. And he does this for 6 days, and then on the 7th day, guess what he does? He rests. He breathes out. He works 6 days, he breathes out, and he rests. Right in the beginning of time. I mean, if we think of God, if God himself lives outside of time and space, if he is infinite, why would he even have to rest after creating only for 6 days? It's because maybe he's modeling something that he knows humanity craves today. And in Genesis, we find this account In Genesis 2, it says there that by the seventh day God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day he rested from all his work. How's your rest going? How's your rest going? Right now, are you thinking about all the to-dos, the stuff on your schedule? Are you craving that soul rest where you can just be able to be content and breathe out? It's interesting that God creates this in the beginning of time with humanity. And he says, hey, this is kind of a rhythm that I want you guys to follow, that 6 days you will work, and on the seventh you will rest. He goes on and he speaks more about this day. He says, then God blessed the seventh day, and he made it holy because on it he himself rested from all the work of creating that he had done. I've shared this before, but don't miss the significance of God blessing a day. God's saying that, hey, this day is holy. And I think if we look at culture and society today, I mean, any day that we could actually rest and take off, that is significant, right? That is a holy day. That is what we need. God only blesses a few things, in the beginning. He blesses all the animals so that they can multiply. He blesses humanity after he creates Adam and Eve, and he says, hey, you guys can multiply. And then he blesses a day, and I think the reason he blesses the day is because he knows if we could just rest and find that contentment for our souls, it will multiply in the next few days that we have. So he creates this cycle of 6 days working and then resting, and we call it the Sabbath. Humanity will follow this day. They would keep this day. They would celebrate this day. The Jews would make this a high point in their life. And today, thousands of Christians all around the world would still value a day called the Sabbath. A day where we can stop, where we can rest, where we can delight, and where we can worship. If we look at this word Sabbath, before we go there, if we go to this is probably the best way to illustrate it, I thought, is on our cell phones, right? And I thought, let me ask this question, like, how many of you charge your phone only when it dies? Will you put your hand up? Like, only when it's completely dead will you charge it? Okay, there's a few, all right? You guys are special, all right? How many of you, if we go to the next slide, how many of you charge it kind of like, when it's about here? Who charges it there? Yeah. Who has a kind of a rhythm of charging their phone? Like every night they'll just plug it in next to their bed. Can I just see the amount of hands? Most of us, right? Isn't that interesting? That we have a rhythm for charging our devices. But I wonder if we have a rhythm for charging our own lives. Right? And I could probably, if I had to speak to everyone, I'm sure that the best rhythm that most of us have for recharging and refueling our lives is this rhythm over here. When we are depleted, right? When we are just like, man, I need a break. And guess what we do? Then we take a break. Generally when it's too late. But I mean, for our devices, we plug them in every night. And God actually, He initiates this rhythm for our lives that will refuel us and give us capacity for the next few days. We see this word Sabbath. And this word Sabbath, I like John Mark Comer. He writes about this in his book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And he defines Sabbath as these four things. This word Sabbath actually means, first up, is to actually stop, to pause. You know, you have 6 days that you can work and you can do everything else, but on on the Sabbath, it's a time where you can stop, where you don't have to achieve, where you don't have to accumulate, where you can actually just switch off. He says, hey, the Sabbath is to stop. Next, he says the Sabbath is in its identity, it is to rest. It is to rest. It is to switch off. It is to change the way you live life on the other 6 days, and on this 7th day that you actually refuel and you stop and you rest. And then he says the Sabbath is also identified as to delight. To delight. It is a joy. It is something that honestly us as humans should actually crave and actually celebrate. It is not a religious practice or a tradition that should be burdensome, but it is a delight for us to have this in our lives. And I'm sure if I spoke to all of you and I said, hey, imagine you had 24 hours where you could actually just refuel, where you could delight, where you could rest, all of us would be like, man, I need that. I wish I had that in my schedule weekly. And then most importantly, he says that the Sabbath is to worship. It is a time where we, again, reprioritize our desires and we put God as the most important in our life. It's not just a day that we take off, but we actually spend this day worshiping and saying, hey, God, you are truly someone who can satisfy every single need that I have. So how does this look for you? Just like Jesus invited those that were following him on that day and saying, hey, do you want rest for your souls? And invites them to kind of discover and see the value of the Sabbath. Today I want to invite you into maybe making this a practice. Maybe you could schedule this in. Maybe you could be like, you know what, Wes, that is so true because my schedule is overloaded. And honestly, today I'm speaking for myself because, you know, I grew up practicing and following this way, but I've drifted. I've drifted so far, and, you know, it's so easily to always be pursuing and on the treadmill of doing. But what Jesus really wants us to do here is just to be, a day that we can be. And so today I want to end with these 4 questions that hopefully will help us to practice this day that can refuel our souls. And the first one is this: what would I need to stop? And if you think of your life and you think of doing stuff that is different from the rest of the week, what do you need to stop? Maybe you need to stop working. Maybe you need to stop worrying. What do you need to stop? Maybe you need to stop thinking about those emails. Maybe you need to stop doing all the things that you could do on the other 6 days. What do you need to stop? And as you stop, you place God as the number 1 priority. That I'll trust in him. Hey, maybe this is a day that I can just stop worrying about everything else that I got to do. And I can place God and my trust in him and know that, hey, everything's going to be okay. What do you need to stop? What do you need to do to create space and margin in your life? The second question that I want to ask is what is restful for you? What is restful for you? Because what is restful for me could be not restful for you. What is restful for you? What fills your cup? Maybe it is, for some it could be going out on a nature walk and enjoying the beauty of the outdoors, and for someone else that could be the most torturous thing to do on a rest day, right? Maybe it's taking a nap. Maybe it's filling your cup with, the things that really bring life to your soul. Maybe it's spending quality time with people that just refresh you. What is restful to you? The third question is what brings me delight? As we speak about this day, the Sabbath, it needs to be a delight. It needs to actually be a day that you look forward to. That, hey, this is a day that I can switch off and I can do things that actually bring me so much contentment. Maybe it's riding motorbike. Maybe it's having the best food that you could prepare all the week. Like you've had junk food the other 6 days, but on this day, like it's the steaks going on the barbecue, right? What is it? What brings you delight? Maybe it's an incredible book you can read. Maybe it's just phoning a friend. What brings you delight? And then the last question is, what is a worshipful way that I connect to God? And this is an important question because not all of us connect with God in the same way. We've spoken about spiritual pathways here at Gracegate before, where each of us is wired differently, and each of us actually connects with God differently. So what is a worshipful way that I connect to God? And maybe for you, that's actually, getting the Bible app out, opening maybe the Bible and actually reading and growing in your faith by learning. Maybe it's by, being in this building on a Saturday and worshiping with a community. Maybe it's by listening to some worship music. Maybe it's just getting out in nature. Maybe it's actually practicing some of the Christian traditions that will just fill your cup up. What is worshipful to you? Maybe it's prayer. Maybe it's just, voicing everything that's going on in your life to God. And whatever that is, I'd say, hey, write it down and create a rhythm of it. That weekly, one day a week, you will take time to refresh your soul. God says, hey, if you want to experience this, come to me and you will find rest for your soul. In a world that we could never accumulate everything, in a world where we can never satisfy the deepest desires if we had to go out there and achieve everything that is out there, God says, come to me and create a rhythm, create a lifestyle that has a constant space where you can just be, where you can connect, and where you can refuel. God, He spoke this kind of same message thousands of years ago to the nation of Israel. They were pursuing all different ways of, thinking that they're going to find the best way to live life. Trying to accomplish more, trying to, find multiple partners that they can sleep with that will satisfy their desire. They were just doing everything out there to think that, hey, this is really going to satisfy me. And God, at one point, He speaks to Jeremiah, who was a prophet, and He communicates to Jeremiah a word that He wants him to share with the nation of Israel. And this is what He says, and I want to share this with you today. He says, stand at the crossroads and look. And He says, ask for the ancient paths. And I know where your life is today, how full it is. Are you living the best way that you could be? Or are you overscheduled? Are you tired? Are you weary? Are you even burned out on religion? God says, hey, stand at the crossroads. In other words, there's two paths you could go down. Look which way is going to be most helpful and life-giving for your life. Because I can tell you, the world will never show you that resting and not accumulating and not getting is going to really satisfy your soul. But God speaks to Jeremiah and He says, stand at the crossroads and look and ask for the ancient paths. In other words, look back in time and see what has worked. See what is maybe been shared. And as we look to Jesus, we see that Jesus practiced the Sabbath, this stopping, this connecting. And then He says, ask where the good way is. And then He says, and walk in it. So it's no good for us if we know all of this and we don't live it out, right? I mean, generosity is only as good as we live it out. The Sabbath and rest is only as good as we actually live it out. If we stop, if we rest, if we delight, if we worship. So God communicates this, and then he says, and you will discover rest for your souls. I know this is what we crave. I mean, this is probably the biggest desire that we really, truly want, is just a rest for our souls. The scary thing about God voicing this to Jeremiah is his response, or what God sees in the nation of Israel. And this is what he says. He says, but you said, we will not walk in it. We will not walk in it. And I think today some of us live life like that, right? Like we know, we stand at a crossroad, we know which way is best for our life. But we decide, hey, we'll rather drift with culture. We'll rather drift with the hard way that we think will satisfy that never satisfies. And maybe that's in the context of faith. Maybe it's your framework of God and actually surrendering and saying, actually, hey, how can I actually trust in a God who seems so distant? But maybe, just maybe, if you could trust and if you could surrender and you could just say, hey, I want to go and take my next step in this direction and just explore and see what there is. I can guarantee you, if Jesus says that he will bring rest to your souls, if he says remain in me, that's where we're truly going to find it. So God, today you know our heart's desires. You know the things that distract. You know the things that make us overschedule. God, you know the way we live life sometimes, performing and trying to achieve or please, but yet you share a way that is so much simpler, that is light. And today we want to rest in that, God. We want to initiate, we want to action stuff that will really help us to live the best way. And so today, as we've heard about the Sabbath, we pray, God, that you can help us answer some questions that will help us to stop, that may seem weird to others, but refreshing for ourselves, God. A way that we can rest in you, a way that we can delight in the beauty and the great things that this world has to offer. And then most importantly, that we can prioritize you as the person that we want to worship, that we want to surrender to and say, hey God, here's my life. I'm trusting it with you. Thank you, God, that if we come to you, this invitation is always there, and that we know that we can find the deepest soul contentment as we trust in you. We praise you for that in Jesus' name. Amen.